Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so today's session we are going to be talking about the team. And from all of the sessions that you have taken earlier and listened to all of the guest speakers, one of the things that is perhaps most important is even more important than the technology, even more important than technology market matching is the people. Unless you have a strong team, nothing else will work. So there are a couple of things we will look at. This is a session, there will be a couple of examples. So my previous sessions, there were lots of examples, too many examples. So in this, we will have a set of questions that will get you to think about the layers or how discussions about teams intersect or overlap with intellectual property, how teams overlap with raising financing, how teams overlap with the legal structure of the organization. We will look at some of these aspects. Now, these are typically full courses, right? So there are limits to how much I can tell you here, but at least you will have a basic structure and you'll have references that can help you explore it further. The slides will be shared with you after the session. Okay, so with that, let us refresh ourselves with this figure. We've looked at it a couple of times. So we started our course by saying science innovation takes a long time. It involves a number of people. It often emerges from universities and research centers, and the scientist, entrepreneur, and his or her lab members are involved in moving this process forward. The locus or where this action happens, it starts in the lab. And as you know, from all of the guest speakers, some of whom had started their own ventures, if you looked carefully at their slides and were listening carefully to them, they would have said, and they had said things like, well, it took us 2-3 years to figure out what to do next. All of that 2-3 years activity is happening inside the lab with the faculty member, with the students, sometimes undergraduate students, sometimes graduate students, PhDs, postdocs. They are involved in this process. And the other part you will see is as this process is moving forward, you will see that you have that unmet market needs. You will talk about patents, which are central to science-based ventures. Without patents, you will struggle to raise financing. And today we are going to be focusing more on the attracting and mentoring that founding team. And only with the strength of the team and their experience will you be able to form your venture and then raise funding from various sources. It would be fair to say that it's very rare for science-based ventures to be started from your own money. You will need to raise funding from other places. And people will only give money on the strength of your idea and, even more importantly, the strength of your team. So what do we mean by strength of the team and how can we move forward? So there's a researcher by the name of Chuck Easley, and he's done some work over the past decade and more. And he came up with a couple of questions that scientists typically face when they start science-based ventures. So what are the problems? What kind of questions? First question is, well, how many people do I need? What is the size of my founding team? Do you want one more person? Do you want 2 more, 5 more? How many people do you need? The second question that is important was, well, if we need X number of people, 3 or 4 people, who are those people? What kind of people do we need in our founding team? So size of the founding team, composition of the founding team. And finally, where will you find them, right? Where will you get these founding team members or co-founders, as the case may be? So these are the three layers or the three types of questions that you will encounter as soon as you develop the understanding that you need more people than just yourself. Okay, so now let us look at the first question, founding team size. How many people might you need? And I'm not going to give you just an answer saying, well, every team should have 4 people. That is not the way you would look at it. You want to assess it in terms of your TRL level, in terms of your own capabilities that you have, and what is the missing piece, what are the gaps. That said, what do we know? So again, from Easley study, it is broadly understood in a range of studies, if you have a larger founding team, the probability or chance of performing better or higher or surviving is better over time. If you have a very small founding team, then your chances of survival tend to be lower. Larger founding teams will tend to be higher. That said, in reality, what happens? In reality, most founders delay expanding their team. They say, let me try do more and more of the work quietly, alone, with my laptop, with my experiments, without getting too many people involved. Let me do many things in secret. What that does over time is, it will take you longer to explore some of these ideas. There are limits to how much you can do alone, right? And because of that, longer term, the performance of your venture might be impacted because you are trying to do almost all of it just yourself. And all of this is backed by studies which show that this is true. And it's not just one researcher who is saying this. There are others. Here in a more recent study, again, very extensive study, not just at science-based ventures, but at startups more broadly. Larger personality diverse terms in startup show an increased likelihood of success. The chances of succeeding will be higher with a larger founding team. If you plan to do it alone, just by yourself, it is very unusual. Because when you go with that idea, when you go with a pitch, I know many students I work with, when you ask them on that one slide, talk about your team, they will have one photograph. And then they will have a couple of spots. They will have some designation, CFO, CTO, CMO. There will be some designation, no pictures, no plan, right? Many people do that, right? So even if some of you do that tomorrow, that's okay. But you should acknowledge that you need more people, right? So that's what tends to happen. Then I will also remind you of a quote that we looked at from an earlier slide. In retrospect, you remember I showed you one slide in one of our classes last week, which said, well, these are all the ways in which startups fail, right? The top one was nobody wanted the product. Beyond that, what was the next thing that was important? It was, we never thought about having a finance person. We never thought of having an operations person. By the time we realized it, the ship had sailed. And we had lost the interest of investors. So all of these things are interconnected. So if you want to survive, I know that there is a tendency to be very protective, very secretive, and this is not just in India, everywhere. When you talk to inventors, when you want to talk to people wanting to start ventures, there is always this hesitancy that, well, I don't want to share what I am doing. I want to do it very quietly. There are some terms that I use, stealth mode. You work in stealth mode for many years. And there are companies or teams also doing this, startup ventures. In fact, there are, when you register a startup, sometimes it is called stealth co, right? So that nobody knows who is doing what, where are they incorporated, and all of it. So all of this is common. No, it's not. I'm saying it's the kind of label. So labeling that I'm not saying it's a legal term. I'm saying it's the kind of label that they use. And sometimes, so I've collected data on a large number of ventures from these SEC filings and all of it. What happens is, when you raise funding, sometimes the name of your venture can also be changed. So you work as with StealthCo or something or StartCo or Startup One or whatever, like, and you work for 5 years, and then you raise some funding from some VC, and they say, okay, now you are working in the biomed space, let us choose some other name. If you look at Moderna, it didn't start its life as Moderna. There was some other StealthCo kind of name, if you dig back deep enough, into a company called Flagship. Flagship Ventures was the VC. So you will find that in many of these instances, the names change over time, but the venture, the people, the ideas, it is basically the same. Okay. So founding team size, linked to TRL, linked to the capabilities that you have, and then also, I would say that you have to see what are your plans, what are your timelines. When we did the business plan session, one of the things was timelines. So in the next 6 months, what is your plan? In 12 months, what are you seeking to achieve? Very soon, when you think of it like that, you will quickly realize, well, I'm not going to be able to do all of these things alone in 6 months. You will need other people. Okay. Then we look at a very, very important thing, nuanced, layered thing is, well, you need more people, but not any people. It's just not, well, you are a scientist, you don't have business experience. It's not good enough to say that, well, I can get any other business person and that should be good enough. No, you are in a science-based venture, higher levels of uncertainty. What is the other unique aspect of science-based ventures, which makes it somewhat different from other ventures? What do you think can be another factor? How are science-based ventures different? The risk levels are higher, technology risk, market risk is higher. There is one more element interconnected to both of these that is different for science-based ventures. Product is still a discovery, but as you move towards market, do you see any other challenges that will happen most commonly if you are a science-based venture? Yes. So regulations will be a factor in just about any science-based venture. If it is materials, you will have some regulations, you will have some standards, you will have some integration issues. 100% the case with biomedical, especially if it is in vivo. So all of these factors make for an additional layer of complexity. Okay. So what kind of skills should you have on your founding team? So we are talking about people other than you. So you would need technical skills and relevant complementary skills. So typically you wouldn't want the next person coming in to overlap with what you already do. You want someone related but different and complementary. Then one of the things that happens when you're talking about science-based ventures also is, you might find some scientists who are extremely creative, imaginative in their work, and there are others who are very operational, SOP driven kind of, well, this is the step 1, step 2, step 3. You you need both kinds of people. If you are developing a regulatory package, you cannot talk about all of that great creativity. This is the time to follow structure. So there is an ongoing tension in science-based ventures as well as elsewhere in other sectors, where at one level you need newness. You remember our discussion on innovation and new, what does new mean? New to the world, new to the company, new to the geography. What does newness mean, right? So you need people who are very creative, who can connect uh, concepts or ideas from different disciplines. But you also, all of that creativity has to connect to, say, quality control, right? At some level, you need to have structure. So if you are the creative person, then the next person you bring on should have some strong strengths or skills in quality control, manufacturing, those kind of ideas. Hmm? So here is the example. I have had the occasion of meeting both Dr. Nagesh and his partner in Bangalore. So this was also one of the examples. The name of the company is called Vimano. They do advanced materials and membranes of various types. And this is an interesting example at a couple of levels. You look at the age difference between the founders. Hmm? And also that both of them were working, they overlapped together at another company called Thermax. And there they started discussing, I think Dr. Nagesh had done his PhD outside India, and then he had come back. And same for his co-founder. He had also gone abroad somewhere else, and he came back. And as they were working together in Thermax, co-workers, he said, well, I've got this great idea. We would like to start this venture. Hmm? So two co-workers in a established company decided to start this venture. And that was funded by Ankur Capital, the person who was here. So this is one of their portfolio companies. So this is an example of both of the people having technical skills, complementary technical skills. One might be characterized as more of the creative person, the other might be characterized more of that very structured operational. And you need both of those skills to get the startup off the ground. So this is an actual startup in Bangalore. So I've gone, I've visited their lab, and I've seen the kind of membranes that they make. Very interesting. Okay, but as we know, beyond technical skills, before you plan to raise any kind of funding, it is really important that your team demonstrate that you have some managerial skills or industry experience. Hmm? Otherwise, if your team is composed solely of technical skills without industry experience in some form, that might be a challenge. Now let us look at managerial skills. What is the kind of managerial skills that may be relevant? One of the best things you could have is prior startup experience. If the person that you're bringing on as a co-founder has already started companies before, ventures before, then they will have a much better sense of what is the process like, how do you handle the uncertainty. Because typically in a startup venture, you will have 20 things to do. You will not be able to do all 20 things that day. You have to choose what you want to focus on, right? And so sometimes you want to be really sure that you are focusing on what is the most important thing or the top 2-3 things that you want to achieve. This prior startup experience would be ideal if it was in a science-based venture. If someone comes to you and says that, well, I can help you, I have started an e-commerce company, may work, may not work. Because your uncertainty, your regulatory needs are very, very different than starting a website or a platform. Then, of course, prior industry experience. So not started a company themselves, but have worked in industry. There also, I would suggest caveats. Not anybody working in any industry. You would want somebody who has some senior level experience. So vice president or C-suite experience. C-suite is CEO, CFO, CTO level experience. typically for about 10 plus years. Not like, well, I became a VP last year and now can I join as CEO, right? And then again, you want that prior industry experience in some form to be relevant to your idea, right? It has to be some way. So these are ways of, now all of you or many of you might be on LinkedIn, or you might be part of many networks. You will have alumni, you will have juniors, seniors, colleagues everywhere. And you might have worked at multiple institutions, and you will have a large network. So when you think about your networks, who are the types of people who might fit some of these kind of very specific criteria? It will be a handful of people. And it is not necessary that the handful of people you think are the best, they are just waiting for your call. Right? They may say, I'm perfectly happy in what I'm doing. I don't want the stress or the risk or uncertainty of joining a startup. Right? So finding that co-founder, and specifically someone who can really contribute to your idea, is not that easy. Okay, then if the person has some relevant regulatory expertise, highly valuable, right? So this is the way you are thinking of, well, you come to the realization, I cannot do it alone. I need more people. It cannot be any person. You would ideally want very specific skill sets that you are looking for. Then, extremely valuable for startups, prior fundraising experience. There are CEOs, especially in the West, who are specialists just at fundraising in that sector. If it is biotech, their job is, I will be there for 3 years with you. During that period, my job is to deliver 300 plus presentations per year, 300 plus, in the hopes of getting 1 or 2 rounds of funding. That is their full-time job. And they will have contacts, they'll be able to set up meetings, they will be traveling everywhere doing just that one task, fundraising. And they will know exactly what bullet point to write on their slides. All of you are making slides. You are thinking about bullet points. What do I want to have on the slide? What do I want to take away from the slide, not keep it in the slide, right? There are specialists who know exactly what to target. And of course, financial management expertise. Financial management expertise can be broader. It doesn't need to be as relevant to that industry. It can be, but at least industry experience, financial management. Then, as you move forward, let us assume you are working towards fundraising, some funds have been raised. Then you want to think about, well, you are not going to survive just on raising funds from VCs. Someday you have to make and sell products, right? So you need people who have manufacturing setup experience. They know how to set up factories or small units where prototypes, pilots, all of that kind of testing can be done. Again, in the relevant industry. And they have business development experience or expertise. So if you say, I have a medical device and I want to sell that medical device or provide that medical device to primary healthcare centers across rural Karnataka. It's a very specific skill set. Not everybody, not every salesperson will have that. Somebody who is working with, say, a company like Reckitt Benckiser, which is selling shampoos and biscuits, they may not be able to do that. Ideally, the closer you have to your own relevant industry, the little bit easier. Again, India is a huge country, lots of experts, lots of professionals are there, so you stand a larger chance of getting these people. So I'm saying that you will find people like that. Maybe you find 10 people and out of that you select one. Even for Moderna, for Stefan Bancel and others who are hired, it's not as if you send one email, would you like to be CEO, and the person will jump and say yes. Typically, the people who are really, who have the expertise, they are cautious also. They will want to understand you and where your TRL is at, what is your technology, what kind of intellectual property do you hold, how strong is that IP, what is the competitive position. Then they will say, okay, it sounds like a good idea. Let us take this forward, right? So this is a process that plays over a couple of months, sometimes 6 months, 8 months. Okay. So very, very specific expertise that you will be looking for. So for each of your ideas, try and imagine what are the skills you have, technical capabilities you have, what are those missing pieces of the puzzle, and which can be filled in by people like these. Whenever you are going for VC funding, angel investor funding, sometimes in the West, even when you are looking for grant funding at translational grant level, multi-million dollars, multiple years, they will look at this very, very carefully. Otherwise, the reason for rejection will be great technical skills, strong IP, but we don't see a pathway to market because you don't have anybody with this. No funding. You have to wait. Right? Any questions up till now here? Is it clear? What you want to specifically look for in your LinkedIn list of contacts? Everybody has their experience written there. Where have they worked? What industries? You will have people who will have recommendations saying this is a great person to work with. Yes. Yeah. So there will be, now that's the other part. So if your technology is strong, you have strong IP, you have a strong potential to be better than competition, you can have some rewards in the form of stocks. You cannot give out all the cash. In many cases, you yourself are not taking much, right? So the advantage to somebody is that, well, right now you're not going to get a lot of money or cash every month. Instead, if this works, there will be huge profits to be made well beyond normal salaries, right? If there is no one number, but I will tell you there is a set of slides. Ballpark also, I would say that it is sector by sector. It is by founder. How many founders do you have? But what I will say is you give shares, your shares get diluted over time because every investment you take, you are giving equity to other people, other investors also. So over time, founders' equity reduces, but the hope is that the value of the venture increases over time. So even if by the end you have a large number of issued shares and a small percentage of their shares are held by individual scientists or individual co-founders, the value of a single share is reasonably high. So that, for example, if somebody has, say, 10,000 shares, they got it for year one, but each single share is valued at $50 or $200. These are big amounts of money, right? Now the job is, the share when it was issued, it might have been at $20. Now it is the job of these people to work and make that individual share worth $200. So there is an incentive for the people to work really hard, which is also the reason you don't want to just give out shares to people who don't have this. You want to be careful in who you bring on, right? Yeah, so you will need to do a little bit of due diligence, and that is why in several instances, the people you are bringing on come with some sort of personal recommendation from someone else who knows them. It is just not random people from LinkedIn, right? There has to be some way of checking and some way of finding out. It is quite helpful to have a personal connection. And we will get into all of these questions in sort of more nuance. This is almost like a marriage. You don't want to choose the wrong person. Wrong, not because there is anything wrong with them. It is just that they may not be a good fit with where you are. Hmm? Now, what do I mean by fit? What are the types of fit? Do they understand the strategy you have? Do they understand that if you are a science-based venture, it might be 7 to 10 years before things really uh, bring value? Do they agree with the kind of vision you have? For example, again, let's look up at the medical device for rural healthcare centers. What if you want to serve society and provide those medical devices at a low price so that many children or people are diagnosed from preventable blindness and everything goes good? Whereas your co-founder says, well, I want to make a lot of money. Let us charge whatever is the higher price. And you have a different ethos. The reason you got into it was not just to make a lot of revenue, it is to serve society. That is what motivates you. So you want to be thinking about these things so that you, once you start cycling together or rowing together, you don't want to find out that they were doing it for different reasons or for a different purpose, right? And I'm not saying that one thing is wrong and another thing is right. It is just that people have different priorities. And the other thing we will also uncover is priorities change over time. Maybe when you started the venture, nobody had a family, nobody was married, everything was okay. And then as your venture progresses, you are still science-based, the products are still not, it is somewhere on the horizon that we will generate some revenues. And then there are other responsibilities, and suddenly people start thinking, well, what am I doing in life? What am I achieving? Right? All of these factors become important. So priorities change. How does your venture move forward when your co-founder or you had some different plan and then things started changing? And it is natural. In life, there will be change. How do you account or plan for that? To some extent. This gets into some idea around contracts. You will never get a perfectly written contract which anticipates all possible outcomes, has a paragraph for every outcome, and has a clear strategy for everything. Right? You don't have perfect contracts. That said, you can plan to address some of the common things that happen so that at least everybody knows what is possible beforehand. And typically, like I said, from all of the conversations that I have been part of, typically for all of what we are discussing, people are not really too worried when no money is being made. It is only when you start generating some revenue, then people start thinking, okay, I put in their mind, they will say, I think I put 7 years of my life into this. I should be getting 5% more, right? So those kind of discussions don't happen when nobody is making money. Everybody is working together, working hard, things are going well. When you don't make money. But when you do make money, that is when sometimes there can be challenges. Okay. And fundamental, beyond all of this, whoever you choose has to work well with you. Beyond anything else. If this is there, everything else can be fixed. If this is not there, you will lose some hair. Right? And there will be challenges, there will be stresses, there will be difficult times when you will not be able to answer questions from investors because investors will want clarity and you cannot give clarity. I know of situations where founders got shares and somewhere in that contract or agreement there was some clause which said that for any future decision, you have to get the yes of this one co-founder. You have to get the consent of one co-founder. Sounds harmless enough. Now, after 5 years, things didn't work out. That person left, still holding that shares. He said, okay, we'll come back whenever you make money, I will cash out. However, the challenge is any investor, when they do due diligence, they will find, oh, there is this one person who is not now closely linked to your venture, but any serious decision, you want to go towards an IPO, you want to merge, you want to partner with Pfizer or somebody, unless you talk to this guy, things don't move forward. And so that person, even without being involved in the day-to-day activities, has quite a bit of control because of the way the agreements were set up at the time of founding. And once you have something written and set up, it is in many countries very difficult to break that and make another kind of contract. What is done is done. It is very difficult to change. There will be, but not everybody has agreements. Those who have agreements may not have all these clauses. So all of these things are there, right? So you can plan, and exits are not just of one type. There are a whole range of reasons. I will touch upon some of these reasons, but you have to anticipate. And it is not I'm not saying that you have to be wary of co-founders. You need to trust these people because you are going to be working with them for a long period of time, and even like ups and downs of the ways ventures operate, and especially science-based ventures with the amount of uncertainty that exists. And yet you also need to account for life. You also need to account for changing priorities. At the higher level, this alignment should be there. The one aspect is timelines. What if everything is there, but they want to be involved with the startup for 3 years and you are thinking about 10 years, right? Everything can be aligned, just not the timeline, right? Then what do you do? How do you manage some of these processes? Okay, so all of this to think. What else should we think about? Venture strategy. So there is research which shows that if you have to compete with large companies, if your competitors in your industry are large companies and you are going to focus on directly competing with them, then having diversity in your founding team is better. What kind of diversity? Functional diversity, technical diversity, managerial, industry sector diversity, all of that makes sense. It is valuable. Diversity helps during competition. Now let us assume flip side. Biotech startup, the plan is to work together with large companies. Then you can choose to be very technically focused. So if your plan as a startup is, we are going to handle the risk, we are going to work forward, and at some point, our plan is not to start manufacturing, we just want to get acquired, or we want to license out our technology. We don't want to take all the challenges of building a sales force, selling all across the country or the world, thinking about IP and regulatory frameworks across multiple jurisdictions. There are large companies who are already have all of the setup to do all that. We just want to work with them. If that is the nature, then your choice of co-founder can be technical focused. You have some technical skills, you need some more complementary skills, prioritize that first, right? So that would be, so that's another layer to it, how you choose. So all of these, what are these questions answering? What is the size of the founding team? Who do you want to bring on board? That is the kind of question that we are trying to answer. Then, where will we find these people, these important partners? First one, of course, your own lab. And you looked at FibSol, and there were other companies also from my own research, professors. They will have their own networks. Abcelera started with 6 people from the same lab. The professor started the company and had a couple of co-founders, couple of early employees, 6 of them, all were from one lab. It can be from other departments or related complementary disciplines from your own institution. So then again, there is a way to check that, okay, how is this person like? How do they behave beyond what you see on websites? Right? Can they be trusted? Trust is very, very important. What about integrity? When you are under stress, what is the character? Then your TTO or TLO might know, Technology Transfer Office, they work with many, many startups. They might find that, well, this startup is not doing so well, but the person leading it is a great person. Maybe you could ask them to join. So there are things like that that are possible. Then, of course, angel investors, VCs, once they have invested in you, or if they are planning to invest in you, they really see a lot of potential in your idea. They are often sources of recommendations or suggestions for co-founders. I personally know instances where VCs have themselves joined as co-founders, provided proper conflict of interest and all of those things. Sometimes it's at a temporary position. While you find the good person or the ideal person, we need to move this forward, right? We cannot wait for 8 months until you find the right person. I will step in and help you set some of the legal paperwork with the plan that once you find the right person, I will step off from that. All of that happens. Professional network, of course. Industry co-workers, as the case of Vimano that we saw, that also happens. Then you have serial entrepreneurs in that industry who have got experience, they have done it. There are some people who like doing this work. It is high stress, but there are some people who are specialists who enjoy doing this. They do it for a couple of years, get something off the ground and say, I want the next challenge. There are people who like challenges like that. And of course, experienced industry professionals who might want to join. For example, like again, I give the example of Moderna, the person who is currently the CEO, he's now stepping off, but he in his career had a lot of experience with large pharma. And he said, well, if I want to complete my CV, I also want to work in a startup because it's a challenge to see. Well, if you are in a large company, somewhere in your mind, you always have that feeling that, well, how much of the success is attributable only to what I did? In a startup, that is very clear, or definitely clearer, because there are no confounding factors. There are no factors like, well, it is the brand, nobody knows you, right? Your personal effort and that of your co-founders is what is moving this forward. So it can be at times more satisfying. You have a lot more control in a startup, right? You can quickly take decisions. With large companies, there are all of these committees and decisions go through layers of management. And then it can be somewhat less challenging, right? And more bureaucratic. So sometimes people want different challenges. There are also instances that there are like, again, I will give you another layer. There are times when there are senior people in the US or in some other country. They've got old parents back in India or someplace. And then they want to be closer to their family. And then they get an email from some startup. And they say, okay, I have made the money that I want to make. My children are going to the college where they want to go. My parents need me. And here is this opportunity. Sometimes, and I know instances, at least in Canada, that's happening too, is people take decisions because of these kind of considerations. It's not just CV, technical skills, it is also because sometimes of personal factors. And there will be many of us at times who will have taken decisions like that. Okay, so these were the top 3 things. One, size of the team, the composition of the team, and where you will find those people. So we have gone into some level of detail. Okay. Then in another study done by 2 researchers called Ambos and Birkinshaw, 2010, they said This is from a VC. They said there was nothing to invest in. It wasn't even a vehicle, or it wasn't even a company or anything at that stage. We would have to do the VC is saying we would have to create the company. The scientists have a great technology, but they have no clue about how to move it forward. So we entered into a dialogue and worked very closely together, almost like consultants. So this speaks to that idea that don't see VCs or angels just as well. They are the ones providing the funds. They can do a lot more. And as you work with VCs who have been, or angel investors who have been there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they will have very, very extensive networks that can be relied upon to take your idea forward, provided your idea has some basic strength or building blocks that work. One of them being intellectual property. Now, there is being a founder or co-founder itself, it is a solution to a couple of challenges, but having a founding team can create its own challenges. So there is a researcher at Harvard Business School. His name is Noam Wasserman. He's written a very interesting book called The Founder's Dilemmas, studying hundreds and thousands of startups over decades, multiple decades. He has been just focused on this. And he has come up with a set of challenges that founders face and where people fail or struggle. So, solo versus team. Do I want to do it alone? Do I want a team? Relationship dilemmas. Sometimes the quick way forward is, let me hire my friend or sometimes family member, because I trust them, they know me, I know them, and we'll figure out other things later. Sometimes that can work, many times it may not work. Then role dilemmas. Who will do what job? Reward dilemmas. Who will get what pay and why? Hiring dilemmas. Beyond the co-founders, hiring early employees, on what basis? Startups cannot hire hundreds of people. So do you want to choose a person who can do marketing and finance and HR and operations, a generalist, or do you want to hire specialists? Investor dilemmas. Related to all of this, how your founding team is structured impacts how you will raise money. Money which is essential to move forward, right? So he has come up with all of these, and then later on, at some stage, when your venture is up and running and scaling and everything, you might want to take a step back and bring a professional person or CEO to do it. It's not easy handing over something that you have nurtured and built sometimes over a decade or more. How do you hand off control? So these are a couple of things that he's identified. This is what people will face. Startup founders will face. They will go through this cycle, whichever industry you are in. This will happen. Now let us look at the layers. Solo. If you are a solo founder, your networks may be small. Your financial capital or what you can personally put in might be small. Your credit rating, a lot of things will be dependent on what you have, what you can bring to the table. Then it might be a lonely journey. You don't have anyone to talk, you don't have anyone to discuss it with. Sometimes you are not sharing all the things with the rest of your family. So it can be stressful, it can be lonely, and yet you have a lot of control. You are the only person, you don't have to worry about team, you decide yes or no. It's easy at some other levels. It avoids relationship, role, reward, you decide. how much I want to, what role I want to take, what I want to give out on contract, outsource. Everything is yours, under your control. So there are, I'm not saying it's all negative, but there are some negatives, some positives you have to choose. Core founder control. Then, if you have a team, all of the gaps in human, social, financial, your research, technical capabilities, all of that will be taken care of, provided you find the right people. However, the founder has to be collaborative. You cannot have a very micromanaging or controlling founder. You bring on all these people, but then you say that I will be the signing authority and I will do everything myself. You have to ask me to do everything. People who are bringing a lot of skill sets, they may not want to be part of such a team, right? So you have to balance. So it is about delegation. The level of control you will have will be coming down. You will have to trust your partners a bit more. Then you will have all of these things: relationship dilemma, role dilemma, who will do what job, how much will you pay them, why did somebody get so many stock options and I did not get so much. All of those factors will be there. And if you are a sole founder, you talk to anybody, your answer will be, I'm doing fantastically well. Everything is perfect. So typically you need some sort of check or balance in your life to sort of protect you and your idea from too much optimism. In fact, in the morning I was reading a research paper saying that nowadays VC investors and investors are saying, well, when we talk to startup founders, everybody comes with a set of slides which say this is the most fantastic opportunity, right? At some level, you have to give them some promises, you have to, right? But then how do you separate true quality from just words or bubbles, right? So sometimes when you are as a scientist, the chances that you will be overly optimistic are lower. You are trained to be skeptical. You are trained to be cautious. So that will not be as much of a challenge. But that said, single founders run that risk. Investors want demonstrable evidence and metrics and progress, not just saying we are the best in the world. It is easy to say we are doing all this, we are the best. What's the proof, right? What is the unbiased, clear proof that what you're doing is valuable? That is difficult to identify. Okay, so let me now show you a slide that I've shown you before. But the point here is, when you're forming these kind of teams, you will understand things like not every co-author is a co-inventor, right? So this is for Bind Therapeutics, and I had shown you this as an example of when to patent and when to publish. So you have to file a patent application first, then you share papers or posters. That way you protect yourself from any public disclosure aspects. Now, the other part of it that I had not talked about that day was, look at the authors and inventors. On the paper, there are more people involved. On the patent, the related patent, there are less people. So what will happen typically is more people might contribute to the paper and all of that is there, but only a few key inventors. There are legal implications to being an inventor because there is connection to monetary rewards if things work out. So you want to be really careful that someone who has really contributed significantly to the novelty of that research, they are then acknowledged. Point being made here is not every co-author is a co-inventor. And then not all co-inventors need be co-founders. So it becomes a smaller and smaller subset because there are financial legal implications of this smaller set of people. Okay. And there will be institutional rules, there will be some standards. However, this is a gray area. There are enough and more examples in technology history, technology commercialization of people who don't agree with this, who will say that, well, I should have been on that patent. There will be people who are on the patent but not at the startup as co-founders. In that instance, there can be some back and forth, right? So there are a couple of things here. What I will say is this: not every person who is an inventor would be interested in being part of the startup. That is one thing. The monetary benefit aspect is also sometimes linked to your status in that, say, academic institution. For example, if you are a postdoc versus a grad student or a faculty member, those kind of things, not all. So some of the intellectual property policies we have looked at show that sometimes the nature of the contract that you are employed under in the research institution, some of those contracts and some of those criteria are ill-defined, could be better defined in the IP policies of the institution itself. For example, let us take an even more extreme example. Suppose there is a visiting scholar from some other country. They have come here for 6 months, contributed to some experiments, went back to whichever country they came from. Now, rest of the team knows that what the person offered was quite valuable. But how is their status in that institution recognized under the institution's IP policy? Sometimes it's a gray area. So even though ethically all of those things can be considered, you would want to be gracious, you would want to include people. There are times when even with everybody having the best intentions, sometimes the policies, the way they are written, they are somewhat ambiguous or haven't. Sometimes these policies are not, policies might have been framed in late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s. The world has changed, right? Industries have changed. So there are some of those kind of aspects. So all of this to signal, I am not a legal expert, but what I can offer is, in many institutions, IP policies are not perfect. There can be gaps. And then it is up to the team to make sure that everybody is properly acknowledged. And I can give you enough and more links of things where, for whatever reasons, it has not worked out. And where you have some people saying, well, I should have been part of the startup, I should have been part of this team. Then you look at all the documentation to try and find out, well, who did what. So it's not easy, it is challenging. The other layer in all of this is confidentiality. Suppose somebody is not part of all this, but they knew all that was done. What if they go ahead and start another startup? Right? So then your kind of contracts, ideally you want to move positively, you want to make sure. Then there is another layer to it, which is the licensing part, which is, so you started from an academic lab and then you formed a startup, which is a different legal entity. You licensed the IP from the lab into the startup. Now, what if in the way the licensing was set up, if that prevents the professor from doing further research? Right? Saying that, well, all of that was given to the company. Now the company will do everything. And now, right? So when you set these things up, you want to maintain a connect with the lab. You want to make sure that, so I'll tell you one secret that people in this tech transfer space know. More than 90% of patents are worthless. more than 90% of patents are worthless. Worthless. The hope is that it will be useful. Whichever country you look, whether you look at the United States, elsewhere, only a very small fraction of patents are truly valuable. And it is from those valuable patents that you might start a number of companies. So in the bigger scheme of things, while there are many, many tech transfer offices, and even in India, I'm hearing that more and more people are filing patents. You now know that this process takes a couple of years. So the true indicator of success in some form is looking at a patent and tracking its licensing and commercial activity and seeing 5 years down the line, 7, 10 years down the line, what happened. And I would be extremely surprised if it was a rosy picture, because that is not the case anywhere. It's only a handful of institutions which have developed the capability to identify which technologies are worth patenting. Patents are very expensive. Some institutions have funds, philanthropic funds, endowment funds, so they file patents. But out of all, there is an association called AUTM, Association of University Technology Managers. There will be data sets, databases, and all of that. But out of the number of patents that are filed and granted, only a small fraction would get licensed. Of the patents that get licensed, if they are licensed to a large company, chances are that the large company will not do anything much with it. If it is licensed to a small company, science-based venture, the small company has so much work to do that commercialization depends on the success of that small venture. So tech transfer offices like MIT will have criteria which say, if for this patent which we are licensing to you, in 2 to 3, 4 years, if we don't see any progress, the patent will revert back to us. So so there is some clause, which is, it's not just we are giving everything. Somebody worked 20 years, filed a patent. The other thing that they do is license by field of use, which is the patent is something that can be, made into, you remember that figure where I said technology push? From one technology capability, you could have multiple products targeting multiple markets. Yes. Then the licensing might be, I will give this technology to this startup for this application in US. Another startup will do the same thing in Japan. A third startup will license the same technology for Germany. So you are dividing the risk. Hopefully not all of them fail simultaneously. At least somewhere it will move forward. So it is called licensing by fields of use. So there are ways in which they divide risk or mitigate risk or spread risk. There are ways in which you say that, well, suppose a large company takes it. They know it is valuable, but it is going to compete with their existing product. And they basically don't want that product on the market. Then, if they are going to sit on it for 3 years, 5 years, you will have a clause which says, if we don't see any progress, it will come back to us. So you have to take it forward, because the essence of the patenting system is you are getting that monopoly right in return for sharing your knowledge so that society gets these innovations. The whole setup. So there are other, when you read economics of innovation papers, one of the really interesting quotes is, patent systems are not perfect. They are far from perfect. But up till now, there is nothing better. So we are making do with what exists. There are enough and more problems with patent approaches. I'm sorry? The There are like you can say that there is a line or stream of research which says patents can prevent technologies from reaching market, because to get any product on the market, you need many patents. Again, I give the example of, say, even something like this will perhaps have underlying technologies will have 40 to 50 patents, if not more. I once had, when I was teaching a session at IIT Delhi, we had someone come in from Microsoft. This is nearly 20 years ago. Hmm? And senior research person. At that time, 20 years ago, they said, we have more than 17 patents for the shape of a cursor. That is the amount of patenting activity. And that kind of money only some large companies can spend. So there are terms that are used that are called patent thickets. And then Samsung, Microsoft, big companies, they negotiate among themselves, because nobody can move forward because you are violating or stepping on somebody else's patent. So then there are negotiations, which is why all of it boils down to, as a startup, the strength of your IP portfolio is what will make things move forward for science-based ventures. If you have strong IP, that can sometimes be the single reason why you will get acquired. That can be the single reason why somebody will license from you. So IP is central. Nortel patents are there, BlackBerry, Texas Instruments. There are many examples where the success or how these formerly large companies are surviving because of the strength of their intellectual property portfolio. So there are enough and more examples. Kodak, Xerox. So there are many examples like that. And some of the reasons which perhaps our speaker from Pfizer, Sai, was touching upon was sometimes these small niche markets are so small that they are not of interest to these large companies. It's like saying, well, we have all the marketing, we have the business development team, sales, and everything in place, manufacturing, but that is too small a market. It's even if we get 100% of that market, our total revenues will change by 1% or less than 1% at times. It's not worth the effort. And sometimes for small startups, those are the kind of markets you go to because nobody else wants to go there. Yes. So you go there, you build you generate some revenues, raise some funding, then slowly move upwards. That phenomena, the technical term for it, coined by a professor from Harvard, is Clayton Christensen. The term is disruptive innovation. When you are not competing head on, when you are moving in a niche market, finding a foothold, slowly moving forward, and going into markets that large companies don't want to go there because it is too small, too minor for them to spend time. It's a waste of their effort. Because you are thinking about that big number issue, right? So if you are at 10,000 crores, making 1 crore is nothing. But if you are making 1 lakh, making 1 crore is a big deal. Right? So for a small company starting off, that's a perfect opportunity. For a very large company, that 1 crore is nothing. It's not worth the time of senior management to really think about it, even though they could just swamp it. So those are the kind of things that happen. Okay, let us see what's going on with this. Okay, so is it charging now? Do we know? Okay, the light is on. Okay, so it will take a couple of minutes. So these are basically some of those layers or factors into the need for co-founders. Don't do it alone. You want co-founders, you want a couple of them, you want them with specific technical or managerial skills. For the managerial skills, if you have someone with startup experience from your industry sector, excellent. If you have someone with industry experience from your industry sector, that industry experience is at senior management level, VP or C-suite, 10 plus years, even better. If you have people with regulatory expertise, fundraising expertise, business development, manufacturing setup, all will be useful. That kind of addition to your team can be used as a metric of progress. So we say that how will investors judge you? You don't have products, you don't have revenues. How will they see you are moving forward? Hiring such people is an indicator of progress. So other than patents, other than papers, hiring these kind of specialists is an indicator of progress. So we are touching upon some issues that are very, very, like there are people doing PhDs in some of the sentences I am saying. So it's a vast field which involves the legal domain. There are people who are specialists in the IP and the legal aspects of founding. There are specialists in the HR aspects of founding. There are specialists in the innovation aspect of founding. There are specialists in the economics of founding, and of course the finance, all of it. So for the same decisions that you may take, it is multifaceted, it is connected, and you have to move forward. At the very least, what I would say is you would need to have an awareness of these issues. You may not have a perfect plan for every step, but at least you need to be aware so that you're not surprised. And especially when you are drafting contracts, really take your time. Find the right lawyer. So one of the other key mistakes that people make, you don't have the right lawyer advising you. So your contracts are weak, which then plays out over a couple of years, right? So finding the right professionals to help you can be quite useful. Large number, for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the patent drafting is not good quality. So patents have an abstract, then they have a set of claims. The claims is what gives you protection. So if the patent claims have not been written up properly, however they got granted, then the patent may not be valuable. Also remember, you are inventing, you are doing experiments, so is your competition, right? So what is valuable today may not be valuable tomorrow, because a patent is only valuable as long as other people cannot invent around it or go around it, right? If there is only one way to do something and that way is through your patent, perfect. But if there are other ways to do the same thing, why will they come to you? They won't license you. Your patent is not useful. And so the technology landscape or competitive IP landscape is always moving. You are moving forward, they are moving forward. Who has a breakthrough? Who got that patent? It changes, right? And then there is all this like patent thicket. People hold all these rights. Your patent is only valuable. There are instances where you have a good patent, but it is only valuable if it works with, I know I have a student who came from an institution here in India to Canada to work on sandalwood replacement. Sandalwood is like oil is really expensive, difficult to get. Is there a way we can chemically synthesize? Now, one aspect of what they were doing was also related to patents from another group, right? So you will have occasions where the patents that you have are good, but are only valuable if somebody else's patent can also be licensed and it comes together, and then it can make a product. Just your patent by itself is not enough. It is good, but it is not good enough, right? It is not complete. Other people have so maybe you have a product patent, but the most economically efficient way of manufacturing it, the process, somebody else. You can make another process, but that process will mean that the price is 2 times, which basically means you can make it, it is technically feasible, commercially there is no sense. Why would somebody do that? There will be no market. So the only way through is to work with that person. And I think in the airline or when the first planes or first telecommunications, there was one of these industries, there was an example for a couple of years, for about 5 to 7 years, there were 2 opposing groups who held key patents. Neither of them could move forward until both of them worked together, and they did not want to work together. So the whole industry was stuck for a couple of years. And then finally, I think the government stepped in and took a compulsory license and said, well, we have to move this forward, otherwise if both of you don't decide to partner, it will all be stuck. So there are times when governments can step in some cases with compulsory licensing. So all of these are some of these aspects. Okay, and then, so relationship dilemmas, you have a core founder, you might have direct contacts, friends, family, indirect contacts through your mutual acquaintances. You can find people who can work with you as co-founders. Some instances, it's better to be impersonal so that you can have very frank conversations. If things are not working out, it's time to move on. That is a difficult statement to have when the person on the other side is your friend or your relative. So there are times when having someone who is more of a stranger is easier. Then here is an example. This is from a family business, but the point I'm trying to make here is, this is the case of 2 brothers, same family in a family business. And the statement is, we didn't share the same vision, same family, same upbringing, same parents, same ecosystem, one company, 2 brothers. We didn't share the same vision, risk tolerance, and personal objectives. Our general assumption that siblings are of course similar was surprisingly inaccurate. We were better brothers than business partners. So if you think that, and this is the Canadian example, it is not science-based, but the underlying phenomena is, if you are thinking of moving, and if this is the case with siblings, imagine when you're working with friends or colleagues or former colleagues or others, right? So what is more important rather than the relationship is whether you have alignment on the vision, risk tolerance, and those factors. And that you, for sure, before getting on a co-founder, these factors are critically important. Risk tolerance, personality, time horizon, commitment, value system. Does the person want to be committed for the startup for 3 years and you have a very different horizon? And suddenly after 3 years you get an email or a phone call saying, well, I'm planning to do something different, and you were making all these grand plans of scaling up, right? So you need to at least acknowledge, discuss, think about these things so that these are not surprises. I often say in my class, academics, entrepreneurs, we don't like to be surprised. Nobody likes to be surprised. So the more you can plan for some of these things or think about it, the better it is. And these are, even though they are single words or 2 words, the problems that they can unlock, or the number of things that are behind, say, one word like commitment, it can set you astray by a number of years. You may not be able to solve these problems. It will completely derail where you were going. So better to think about this and align yourself. There are research papers with titles like birds of a feather flock together, which means we will find co-founders who are just like ourselves. We are from the same industry, all chemical engineers or all advanced material specialists, all biotech people. We understand each other, we know the language, things will move fast, everything will be perfect. Birds of a feather flock together. Also called homophily, right? You work together. Now what are the advantages? Trust. You have worked together for X number of years in the lab, everything is moving smoothly, things move really fast. You have a common language. Whatever acronyms you want to use in your sector, you use those acronyms, everybody understands, yes, step by step, move forward. This is the FDA package, this is what you want, all moving forward. What are the challenges? You brought on co-founders, you will share some equity with them, but they are basically just a replica of you, or lot of overlap. Not really too much differentiation. It is just another one of you. So that is something to be aware of. Another thing, this overlap in human capital will mean that, well, everybody wants to do the same thing because they have the same training. So then you want to say that, well, we want diversity. We want people on the founding team, but they want to be diverse. Now diversity means conflict. Suppose you have a finance manager, senior finance person will say, well, you are spending so much on research, I'm not seeing any outcome. We are spending the money, we are paying the bills, we are running out of funds. So from a finance lens, some decisions make sense, some decisions make no sense. From a scientist perspective, you want to be cautious. You want to do more experiments. You want to test something in more simulations, more real world settings. You don't feel ready. Adds to cost. Finance may not be happy. However, like we discussed, if you have diversity in your founding team, if you have high levels of competition, if you have lot of turbulence, tariff wars changing daily, having a diverse team will be useful in helping you move forward better. So here is a quote from a recent paper which talks about two perspectives in the same venture. Operations is expecting to become a high volume factory. So it is one division or one smaller department, operations, which is into manufacturing, quality control. They are like, how many should we make? Let's do 1,000 units. Let's go ahead and manufacture 1,000 copies. What is research saying? Research is saying, take it easy. We are not done yet. It is a large corporate customer. You must understand that. We don't want to take a risk and give 1,000 copies of a product that doesn't work perfectly. So research wants to be slow, careful, cautious. Operations want to, let's make 1,000 copies and off we go. So research says, first we are doing a proof of concept, then we sell that, then we make a pilot, then we do some reliability testing, then we collect some data. This is actual people in an actual company. And then the head of manufacturing says, it's two very different worlds. Are both of them technical? Yes. Same company? Yes. Very different perspectives on speed. One wants to be extremely cautious, another wants to be moving forward very fast. This will happen when you have a diverse team. So you need leaders who can balance that, who can cool everybody's temper and keep them moving forward collaboratively. Okay, role dilemmas. Diversity can be a source of tension. This again is a statement from a real situation. I discovered in conversations with my friend or my co-founder, both of us actually wanted to be the CEO, right? Quite possible. How do you work out of that? Just one sentence, but think of the implications of that. Okay, Professionals versus family members or friends, we've discussed how we think about those kind of challenges. Reward dilemmas. The allocation of benefits can be a significant source of tension. Who got what, how much, when did they get it? All of that can be significant sources of tension. Hiring dilemmas. Who to hire and when. This fits with your timeline. What is your 6-month plan? What is your 12-month plan? When do you need certain skill sets? All that fits into co-founders, all that fits into hiring. Generalists versus specialists. You cannot hire 20 people. So for the few people who you hire, do you want them to do only one task, or do you want them to be ready to do marketing, HR, finance, regulations? We don't have a full-time regulatory expertise person. Can you go and read all these manuals and come back with an answer? I know of Abcelera's early days. That happened. 6 people starting a company, science-based venture. What rewards to offer to attract and retain? So you want all these people, you can't pay them a lot. How do you convince them to work with you? And the example that I use is top-level managerial talent in Vancouver. Very difficult to find C-suite people with regulatory expertise. Vancouver is a very expensive city of the world to live in. Salaries are lower than the US. Costs are often higher than the US. Low salary, high expenses, limited career opportunities at the highest levels, which means it's not an ideal thing for a startup, and so people have things like fractional CEOs, fractional CFOs. So we have a CEO who is committed to us for 1 day a week or 2 days a week, and they will work from San Francisco. We will see them 2 times a year in person. Rest of the time it is on Zoom. Then when you do things like that, there are tax implications for that person. If you are a resident of US, different income tax, paid through Canada, different rules. How do you account for all of that? How do you make it feasible for them? Okay, investor dilemmas, different risks from different kinds of investors. If you've taken money from friends and family to start your venture, often you do. The challenge is you convince them, you talk to them and tell them, this is an excellent idea. They also believe in you. Now, given what we know about science-based ventures, we know that it is going to take more time. You told them it is in 3 years you will be swimming in cash. And instead, after 3 years, you say, I got 2 patents. They will ask, what is a patent? So how do you manage the expectations from people you are closely related with? Can be a challenge. Angel investors, longer time horizons. VC investors, shorter time horizons, 3 to 5 to 7 years. You have to have progress. Now here is another example. I will just focus on the second sentence, which is, he's talking of, this is a CEO who left the company after 20 years or 18 years of building it. 18 years of building a company. This is not science-based, but the quote is useful. He's talking about one set of investors, and he said, their understanding of growth is different. Their timelines for return are different. Their appetite for risk is different. Ultimately, I took debt to grow my company. That single decision after 18 years did not work out well. As a result, after 18 years of your life devoted to this, you have to step out of the company. So these are some of the kind of challenges that happen at times. So taking investment means you are giving control away. When you start giving control away, sometimes one day you might get into a situation where you are asked to move on. So these are the kind of things. So the questions for you for this session is, beyond the skills that you currently have for your idea, for your venture, what other skills do you need? Is it regulatory expertise? Is it fundraising? Is it business development? You have to build a sales team. What are the skills you need which some other person will bring to the table? And that will help you identify a co-founder. So I've gone a few minutes beyond, so we'll take a 15-minute break and come back at 11:55. Any other questions? Yeah, so it depends from investor to investor, right? So investors already know that this is a problem, right? So they will acknowledge that you are trying to find some solution. Everybody would prefer that you have a full-time person, but just because the economics doesn't make sense, sometimes the answer is reverse. Sometimes the answer also is, for Canadian companies, why don't you move to the US? People cannot come there, you take the company to the US. That also happens, which is not great for Canadian taxpayers. We put all the money into research, into the creation of that intellectual property, but when it gets into commercialization, it moves. This is not just a Canadian problem. Funders or investors in Israel are also, at times, there are statements which say, well, we came up with all this great idea. US is just such a magnet for ideas that over time these ideas just coalesce and move to the US. It makes more sense, economic sense. And that is where the distinction is. I also personally know Canadian startups who, because the founder has full control, because the founder did not take investment from outside, which meant that it took them 30 years to grow to a certain size. If they had taken loans, they might have achieved it in 10. But because the person has full control, they take a decision: we will never sell, we will never get acquired, and we will stay in Canada. Even though they have enough and more offers of getting acquired, they choose to. So it becomes not simply an economic decision, it becomes more of a, well, this is what I want to do for my country. So entrepreneurship, science-based innovation can have geopolitical implications, can have patriotic sort of implications, where you want to support your country, your economy, you want to create jobs in your community. All of that can be factors, well beyond the rational economic model that is there in literature.